I don't have any advantage, a special skill, but I can work really freaking hard.
This is Patrice, a 22-year-old college dropout that's making $30K a month after quitting her job 6 months ago to go all in on. In this episode, you'll learn how you can follow in her footsteps even if you're starting from scratch.
I literally had nothing to show for it. No results, no business, no clients, nothing.
Her exact blueprint you can copy to get to $30K a month.
I learned this in 6 months, and I can teach it to somebody else in 6 months.
And some brutally honest hot takes for beginner entrepreneurs that you're probably not expecting.
First off, I would tell myself,
check it out. What is the reality of working 16-hour days at age 22?
I think I'm like addicted to it a little bit. Like I took a walk yesterday and it felt so wrong. I was like, I should be like, and then I wound up calling my brother who's working with me and like giving him like what the plan of action was. And I'm like, I can't even go for a walk without thinking about work. But I just love it so much. It's like all I think about. And I know it's just like a chapter. And so I'm more than willing to like just go really, really hard right now. I just really love going all in with something. I'm kind of like an obsessive personality. So like I just became obsessed with copywriting. And that's what it looked like 16 hours a day.
Was there ever a point where you weren't working hard? You weren't getting those results?
Yeah. I think I heard this quote from Alex Hormozi, and it was like, the hardest working entrepreneurs are also the laziest people, and they don't have something to work towards. And I was like, oh, good. Okay, so I can still be an entrepreneur. Because when I started an e-commerce brand at 19, and then when that wasn't working out and I decided to pivot, I didn't have something to pivot to. So it was like Alex Hormozi videos, reading like a book a week, like just basically like taking in as much information as possible and feeling productive, but also knowing that I wasn't actually applying it to anything. So you were the
classic beginner entrepreneur that was just consuming all this content. You had the motion of busyness, but you weren't actually taking any action.
Exactly.
Right. So what flipped? How did you become this action-taking machine?
I think I just found like little projects that I could go all in. So first it was the podcast, and I would stay up till like 2 a.m. editing my episodes. And I knew that wasn't high leverage, and I had no audience, and it wasn't going to make a huge difference, but I was like, I just wanted to work. And so I found these little things that I could get passionate about, and the podcast led to me like building a little bit of a network, which, then led me to school, and, I found TED. And so every little thing that I got super like hyper-focused on would lead to the next thing. And I think I just had this faith that like if I put in the hours and kind of just threw enough mud against the wall, something was going to stick. And I know that's not everyone's like kind of mindset towards it, but I just knew that if I was putting in enough action, somewhere there was going to be an output.
What gave you the courage or even the idea? It's like, yeah, I'm just going to full send this and do crazy volume of hours.
I think it was more like fear of like working a 9 to 5. I just knew that like no matter what, I didn't want to do that. There was like no alternative to me, that it was like entrepreneurship or like I'll be broke.
So take us back to February. You're making $0. You quit your job. You decide to go all in on business. Mm-hmm. What did you do and how did you get set up on the path?
Yeah, it was terrifying. I didn't tell too many people in my life what I was doing, but I decided to quit my job because my mom actually said something to me. And my mom was super, like, when I dropped out of college, she was not happy about it. But I was talking to her about my podcast back last fall. And she said something. I was living at home. She was like, when are you ever going to have a better opportunity to just go all in with something? Like, if you're going to take a risk, you're living at home, you have no expenses, do it now. And
shout out to mom.
Yeah. And I think at the time I like didn't even listen to her. I was like, that's my mom's advice.
Yeah.
But it stuck in my head. It was such a strong thing that she'd said. And I realized, like, if I didn't quit my job then, I was just going to be the same thing I've been doing for like 3 years. And so I put in my 2 weeks notice with nothing lined up, just an idea of like, I'll make something work with like social media or something. And that's when I heard about Skool. It was like literally a couple days before my last day of work.
Bro, the universe just showed up.
Literally.
You put yourself out there. It's like, I need an opportunity to go all in on something. And then how did you find out about Skool?
So I saw Alex Hormozi's post like 20 minutes after he posted it. A couple minutes later, I had a Skool account. And then I think I looked up on YouTube how to start a Skool community, and TED Car came up. Only video I could find was like TED and Max. So yeah, immediately like went and looked both of them up and wound up getting on a sales call with Ted's team. And then a couple weeks later, I was in his program.
How much did you pay for the program?
$1,000. So that was when he was going for the games.
$1,000 for someone who just quit their job and was making zero money.
Yeah.
For the skeptic listening, like, why the hell did you do that?
I feel like there's another, I'm just going to keep referring back to Alex Hormozi. There's another quote I heard him say, and it was like, you like continue to do actions, you form habits based on like what you were rewarded for. And I just always felt like I've been rewarded for taking risk. Like I quit my job and I found school. I like made a podcast and like met some really cool people. Like I invested, even the e-commerce business that didn't work out, like I learned so much. It took me from being like a total introvert who wouldn't even like leave her house on a Friday night to see friends and like doing that to then like going and networking with people like across the country, flying alone to business events. And I was just like looking back at every risk I'd taken, and as scary as it was to like quit my job, like everything, it just seemed to be like a requirement. It was like, it like, and obviously you're a believer too. And I feel like when you show that faith that like you step out and you're like, this is how bad I want this. I'm willing to risk it all because I believe that this is my purpose. That's when you're rewarded with it.
You got to get out of the boat to figure out if you can walk on water.
Yeah. I love that.
So let's do a quick breakdown, okay? Because I think this is interesting. Because so often if you're a beginner, you see these guys making, 100 million. You see people like Evelyn making 250K a month. You see people making 100K a month. You see people like you making 30K a month. Let's actually show the path, right? So February, you're making 0. How much did you make in March?
March, I made 2K.
Okay, roughly April. How much did you make in April?
0.
Did you make 0 in April? Bro, we'll get into that.
I might have made like $100.
Oh, that's perfect. I actually didn't know that. That's awesome. Okay, so May,
I made about $1,500.
Okay, June.
10K.
Sheesh. July
was about the same as June.
And then August.
30K.
Which is when you pushed for the Skool Games and you won. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So what happened in March that allowed you to make 2K?
So
your first dollars.
Yeah. So I was super honest on the sales call with Ted that like I didn't have a skill that I could market or an offer or anything I could really coach on. And I told him like what I'd done, and we were just trying to figure out like how to create an offer around that. And I think like every time he told me to do something, I just did it immediately. And I would send him like how I did it and what questions I was running into. And at the time I didn't really realize that I was doing anything normal, but I think he saw that like this is someone that was taking action. And so he shot me a message probably a week into the program, and he was like, hey, do you know how to write? And I think at the time I had just started writing in my diary again.
Yeah, I write multiple times per day.
I was like, yeah, I've recently gotten really into writing again.
Oh, that's so funny.
And I had no idea like how to write a piece of marketing. And so, but like Ted could have asked me if I could build a skyscraper, and I would have been like, yeah. And then I would have watched a YouTube video and figured it out. And so that was how that project kind of started. He was like, well, I'm working on, it was like a book at the time and an FAQ. And so I wound up writing like 200 pages in 30 days. And that was a 2K job. And yeah, that was the start of copywriting.
That is such an overlooked thing. The belief that you can just figure it out. Because so many people, opportunity will come literally knocking on their door. Can you write? No, I don't know how to write. Mm-hmm. And guess what the opportunity does? Whoosh, just goes on to the next person. What would you say to the beginner listening that has that mindset?
Well, like if you look at any successful person, it's all learned, and most of them are self-taught, or they just got like it had to start with them teaching themselves something. Even if they got connected to an incredible mentor, there's nobody that was born that way. There's nobody that was even born confident. Like that's learned. I spent so long thinking like there was introverts and extroverts were confident and introverts were shy. And I was an introvert, so I had to be shy. And then like when I started my first business and I had to network and I was going to the events, I had to like really break out of my shell. Like I was really, really bad when I was in high school. I didn't talk to anyone. I ate lunch at the nurse's office. I skipped school as much as possible. I just hated interaction. Like it was bad. Anyone you know that's shy, like I guarantee I was more shy. And so there was this 2-year process where I just had to learn how to be confident. And then I think that made me realize like everything is learned. And so if there's anything that like, if you have an opportunity in front of you, especially if it's like with an entrepreneur that's willing to help you and mentor you, like it's just the fake it till you make it.
Right.
Like you have to just be willing, because like what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Like you can learn anything on YouTube, and if you mess up, they're going to be more impressed with the fact that you tried and you probably didn't ask questions. You just tried to solve the problem yourself and failed, because they went through that too. Like especially if you're talking to an entrepreneur, like they respect that a lot when you're willing to fail. And so, yeah, I think that's what I would say is just like, be willing to fail. It is inevitable. It is required. And yeah, the faster you get over that, the faster you'll grow.
Yeah. And let's take the example of the first project you did with Ted.
Mm-hmm.
What's the worst possible thing that could have happened? You invest all this time, you do all the work, and he hates it. It sucks. You're a terrible writer, and you have to refund the money, or you lose part of the money or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You've made a mistake. Now next month you can just go again and try something else.
And you have a new skill now. You learned something.
Bingo, bango.
And it was really bad, actually. The project I did for TED was terrible the first draft. It was so bad. I think I wrote it like these chunky paragraphs. And I remember Ted was like, let's get on a call. Like, he couldn't even send me the edits, like, on a message. We got on a call, and he just goes through, and he's editing it with me, like, line by line, writing it like copy. So it's like each line is a paragraph. And I was like, that is not what I was taught in English class. And so it was really bad, the first version. But I just remember, like, I was spending all these hours learning it, and like, every edit he made, I was, like, taking note of it so I could apply it to the future writing that I was doing. And yeah.
But this is the genius thing, right? So Warren Buffett, one of the richest guys in the world, one of his famous things he's known for is earn to learn when you're young. And you got paid money to have someone to show you how to write.
Yeah.
And that's not an anomaly. That's not like, oh, Patrice lucked out and she got so lucky. That's like, no. Like, when you're a beginner and someone gives you anything, they're paying you to learn the skill.
Yeah.
And so you're able to learn that skill, and now you have a skill.
Yeah.
And that's the skill, as we'll get to, that has ended up making you $30K a month.
Yeah. There's this saying, I think somebody told me, like, when I was 19 or 20, I was just getting started in entrepreneurship. They were like, any opportunity you get, and they were like, just take this at face value. Don't question it. Any opportunity you get to get around an entrepreneur, to go to an event, anything you get invited to, say yes. Just say yes to everything. And I think so many people, like, think that they have so much more value on their time than they do. Like, getting started, your time is really valueless.
Yeah.
And so I recognized that. I was like, I can go to every networking event, every conference, every party I get invited to where there might be an entrepreneur. And I was just, like, putting myself in those scenarios. And so, like, when I heard of TED and I was like, okay, there's this cool opportunity. He's running this promotion for the Skool Games. Like, I'm in. Like, it was any opportunity I got. I was just like, I'm there.
It's actually, I really loved how we kind of did the month-by-month breakdown. Something that I'd love to do sometime is, like, break out, even for, like, me or for other people, it's like your early invoices. So, like, whenever I decide I want a job, I'm going to pursue entrepreneurship. My first jobs were the weirdest things. Like, some Russian DJ in New York paid me to go and scrape street art off the walls.
What?
Like, I delivered burritos on bicycles.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean? I did big copywriting projects for like 50 quid. And you're learning. You're like acquiring new skills, and like you meet new people, and then you just go and the invoices get bigger and the work gets more interesting, and you figure out what you want to do, and then you get more specialized. You're like, oh, I now have an offer. Let me do this. And it's like, oh, I'm going to optimize my offer, and then now I have a product, and now it like makes more sense, and I can like approach people. But you have to start with those early few jobs. But I feel like so many people are so afraid and also just really impatient about that first step. They want the 10K a month. Right, they want it right now.
Yeah.
And they're not prepared to do the $50 invoice.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? To do the 2K project that you probably had to go and re-edit the crap out of.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched every piece of content that he had and transcribed it and turned it into a book. But I think, like, yeah, like what you said, like, I worked as like an interior designer once, just setting up lights for this lady's Airbnb. Like, I did so many random things. And it's funny because, like, I would always assume the identity. After one job, I started calling myself an interior designer.
Love it. I love that.
One project with TED, I'm a copywriter. Like, immediately, like, assuming that identity. And I think that's powerful, too, because your words are so influential in, like, your own perception, everyone else's perception, and just, like, creating that as a reality.
Yeah. Well, what is an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is someone who gets paid to do something.
Yeah.
What is a copywriter? Someone who gets paid to write.
Right.
So the second that money hits your bank account, it's like, congratulations, you are an entrepreneur and you are a copywriter. I love how you took that identity. That identity ended up being very powerful. So you do the project with TED. You kind of get a return on your investment. So you get 1K and you start getting some work. What did the next month look like? What sort of stuff did you end up doing?
I stayed in the program, invested another $1,000. So that was break even now with the project I'd done and the investment. Then I invested another $1,000 to go meet Ted in person and went to one of his networking events.
Oh, you doubled down.
Oh, yeah. I was like, I'm all in now. And like, I'm just using savings at this point. Like, I had no income really. And so I think the next thing I did was I reached out to the network of entrepreneurs that I'd built just by going to like these networking dinners and stuff. And I started doing like really low paid, kind of like what you were saying, like low paid. I wrote some emails for this guy who had a power washing business. Really doesn't need email marketing.
Love it.
And I think I charged him like $150 and helped him with some Facebook ads, helped him with some emails. And yeah, and then as I was going to these networking events, people would ask me, what do you do? And at the time, I had no goal to be a copywriter, but that was the only thing I'd done. So I just
That was the only identity you had to grab. It's like, I'm a copywriter.
Literally, like I was like, okay, like this is what we're going with for now. It sounds better than unemployed and broke.
And a little more specific than, I'm an entrepreneur.
Exactly, yeah. And I just needed something. And so then I'm at all these business events, introducing myself as that, and people are asking like, oh, like what kind of copy do you write? And that was what led to a lot of just like organic leads. Like people were like, oh, cool, like I need emails, I need copy. And I think it was May. I remember somebody being like, what do you charge? And like what do you charge for like emails? And I'd only like watched like 1 or 2 copywriting videos. And this guy, Cardinal Mason, you familiar with him? Mm-hmm. I heard him say that you start at $3K. So that was the only number that I knew. And I was just like, oh, well, I start at $3K. And the guy is standing there and he's just like, okay, cool. And he connected me. He became a client and connected me to another client.
Holy smokes.
Just straight off the bat. So that was then June. Became my 10K month. But yeah, so that is the power of just like assuming that identity. It was just like,
sure. And I think something that's really important to underline as well is if you're a beginner, you don't understand how business owners think and how they operate and how they work. Business owners are usually making more money in a month than you can possibly imagine. And what is their one goal? It's to make more money and grow their business. Mm-hmm. If they meet some random person who they can pay $100 on like a little random experiment that might lead to them making $500 or making nothing or making $100, most entrepreneurs will take that punt, especially as if you say they need something. You know, I've been thinking about, doing something on Facebook for a while. I've been thinking about emails. Like I listened to a podcast and I haven't had time to do it. Maybe you're the person that I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. And so you can just become a solution to somebody's problem. And then they give you money for it.
Yeah. Just problem solving.
$3K felt like all the money in the world to you then.
Oh, yeah.
And for these dudes, I bet you it was like they didn't even think about it.
It's just their marketing budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And probably a small portion of it. Mm-hmm. So why did you make $0 the month before your 10K month?
Yeah. So, well, May, I think I made like $1,400. Mm-hmm. So I made a little bit of money. And that was when I first started like selling on Skool. So my first sale was in May. And the month before that was when in April, I made $0. So I made the 2K with Ted, and then I was still just trying to figure out my offer. I had like a general business school community, trying to teach every kind of business in the world.
Bro, I remember that. Schoolers.
Yes.
You were in the merch. You were in the community. You had school shoes. I was like, who is this woman? You just had like said that, yeah, I just left home.
Yep.
I bought a one-way plane ticket. I was like, who is this psychopath?
And you know what's funny? That was June. So that was my first 10K month. But I booked that ticket before I'd made any sales in June.
Wow.
I was like, I'm going to move out when I hit 10K. And then June came and I was like, it's going to be this month.
Just for proof, by the way, like I'll literally put up on screen right now, like we did an interview whenever you just had hit your first 10K. And it was really interesting, like if you're connecting with Patrice's story and you want to go back and like look at the archives and see how her thinking's changed, how her offers changed, how what she's doing's changed, just go back and watch that video because that was you really raw in the moment, like literally had just made 10K a month.
Yeah.
And now already you've tripled that in a short space of time. But I think it's really important to kind of leave the breadcrumbs and show how it actually works. Because like we said at the top of the show, there's so much mysticism. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy even to look back like 3 months ago. Because I think like what you were talking about before with like the crazy amount of work, like that's just a way to condense that like personal growth. Because now I look back at myself 6 months ago and I'm like, oh, like she was so little. It was such like a different, I was a totally different person. It was such like a different like mindset that I had and like, gosh, like I was always like setting big goals. I remember like telling like one of my friends last summer, I was like, this is gonna be my first $1 million year.
Boom.
I was making no money. And they laughed at me and I was really offended. But I had no, like 30K, I couldn't even comprehend that. But I was still saying like these crazy numbers. I was still like, yeah, I'm gonna be a millionaire next year. Mm-hmm. And like that is so powerful. And it's just, so long as that doesn't take the place of you actually doing the work, because it does feel really good to say those things and to talk. I hear people talk really big sometimes, but then not back it up. So backing that up, if you combine that, like you speak really big things and then you back it up with a really big work ethic, you're just going to accelerate that personal growth.
And it's really interesting, the tone that you used to describe yourself 6 months ago. Oh, I was so little. Like I was so... That's the tone that grannies use to talk about themselves whenever they're 20. And you used it to describe yourself 6 months ago. But the reason you did is because you've lived a whole lifetime of work in these 6 months. Like you've done more work in 6 months than most people watching do in 3 years. And you've went all in and you've committed and you've focused. It's not distracted. It's not like you got a job in Chipotle and then you quit and then you like drove Uber for a while and then you quit. And it's like you were dialed in.
One thing, one offer, one channel.
Yeah. And so the reason why you've been able to have all these years of progress in such a short space of time, like we're not trying to sell anybody this dream idea that entrepreneurship is super easy. It comes really fast, overnight success. It's like, that's just been proven it's not the case. Like, I just want to pause and say, Patrice did this. You did this because of the work that you put in. Let's do a little bit of hustle for a second. What does a typical day look like for you?
It's changed a lot recently. So since going for the Skool Games, so the last like 60 days, I guess, or the last maybe like 45 days, I wake up around like 5 or 6 a.m. because I usually have I still have a calendar set up for like people in New York. So it's 9 a.m. in New York, 6 a.m. in California. So I usually have a couple calls like really early. And I still take all my discovery calls. So I'll have like a couple discovery calls. And then I have like a chunk of time when those calls usually finish. Sometimes I don't have calls, but if I don't, then there's just this work phase until 9 a.m. And then I get on a call with the one person I have on my team, this awesome woman who was a student of mine and she's now writing for me. And so we just do co-working for an hour. And that's how I've trained her without like slowing down my own work. And so we'll get on a call.
So you guys will write together? Oh, TED style?
Edit it live and then just mute ourselves and like work.
The student becomes the teacher. I love it.
Everything I do, it goes back to like TED or Max. Yeah, and so that'll be like 9 to 10 a.m., which is an hour. And then it's usually like either a client call or just writing. I mean, most of my day is writing. So whether it's designing graphics for an about page, putting the copy in there, writing emails and welcome series, going through and just editing like other work that this woman Olga has done or other work that I've done. And then there's at least like, I would say an hour of just like communication, like going through my Skool DMs, like sending messages back, probably another hour sending looms back to clients, reviewing stuff with students, because I still have like copywriting students. And so that'll be like a couple more hours. I usually have lunch around like 2 and I have 1 meal a day to optimize my time. So it's all very optimized.
The nomad lifestyle, we've all been there. What is it, like 4 steaks and 20 eggs?
It's an acai bowl, actually.
Oh!
Acai bowl and like gluten-free banana bread or something.
Nice.
That's my combo. And then I have some type of protein, so like eggs or something.
Yeah.
So it's like a good amount of food. But yeah, so then from that'll be like an hour of just like usually I watch content while I'm eating. So like I watch like a podcast, one of your podcasts, or I'll watch some of my clients' content to like kind of plan their email series or whatever. And then I usually have like a work period for like the afternoon to the evening. The evening, maybe around like 6 or 7, I'll take like an hour-long break. And that's like my break of the day. I'll decompress, and then I'll get back to work until like 10 or 11 p.m.
Wow. So 6 till 10.
Yeah.
How long have you been in that for?
Well, probably on and off for the last 6 months, but consistently every single day, no breaks for the last like 45 days. But yeah, I don't remember the last time I took a day off. So.
Yeah, so this is 7 days a week as well.
Yeah. Yep.
So again, for someone listening, they're like, what the hell? That's a lot. Why have you done this? And why are you continuing to do this in this season of your life? You're 22. A lot of women your age, they're going to Bali, they're chilling, they're maybe going to college or finishing their college. It's like, why have you dedicated this season of your life to this insanity level of work?
There's like this analogy I'd love to like use to illustrate this. So like when I was a kid, I was like always the kid that wanted to like I would save my dessert and eat that last, and I would eat it super slowly. And I was always like, I would always eat like the veggies first, and if I had chores, I would always do the chores before like whatever I wanted to do. And so I think there's that like delayed gratification mindset, but also like I just have this like need to see what I'm capable of, and to like I just feel like almost like a responsibility, and not to like inflate like whatever I do, but I know that there's something I was given that I have to give back, and that it's not a negotiable. It's not mine. And so I think there's that sense of responsibility of like, I owe something to the world. Mm-hmm. And so that combined with like, I got started in entrepreneurship fairly young, not as young as some of the people I'm meeting now. But I think I always had in my head, I was like, wow, like I'm like when I was 19, I was like, I'm like 19 and I'm like talking to these like 27-year-olds. So like, if they got started at 25, like where could I be by the time I'm 21? And I was like always like doing the math, and I was like, how ahead can I get? And so there's like, I think that combination with just like the love that I've developed for the hard work, and like also the combination of like setting goals that are always out of reach. Like I don't think there'll ever be a point where I'm like, okay, I've made it. Like it's all just about like how much more can I do? How much further can I take this? The money is completely irrelevant. It hasn't even set in it. I actually don't want to look at my bank account because I don't even want to know, which is probably a bad thing. I probably should get an accountant. But I just like I don't even like, the money is meaningless. That's why I'm like, I was processing payments through Stripe the other day because I upsold some clients. And I was like, oh, but like it's not contributing to my status on Skool. Like it's all become so gamified to me.
Yeah.
So I think like it's really at this point just like playing the game of business, and always like setting these unachievable goals to continue like moving the goalpost.
Yeah. I read a book on the plane on the way here, and this is the second time I'm quoting Buffett. I'm not a huge Warren Buffett guy, so I don't want to pretend to be. And so Warren Buffett's worth maybe like 85 billion, somewhere around there. And when Warren Buffett was 65, he had only made like 5 billion.
Wow. How old is he now?
He's like in his 80s.
Wow.
And so much of Buffett's success is just because he's been doing it for so long. And there's like a classic, again, I'm not an investor, I'm not pretending to be, but it's like time in the market beats your timing in the market. And they were basically analyzing, it's like there's way more successful investors than Buffett, like way more successful if you look at their annual returns and stuff. But Buffett started when he was like 11.
Wow.
And so he's just had all this time to get the experience, to get the lessons, and then to benefit from the compound interest. And I feel like that's the opportunity you have, being so young and being an entrepreneur, combined with the amount of hours, is it just gives you like all this experience, and you're investing your early 20s into getting ahead almost. Yeah.
And it's just like, it's addictive. Like once you have one win, I think that's like the key, is like that first sale, that first win, that first bit of like reinforcement. Like if you just fight to get that, now you're hooked. Like whether you change your offer or you completely pivot your business model, like that one win is the hardest to get, and it's the most powerful one.
Yeah.
And that's where it all starts. And then you can decide if you like the game, but you got to get that first win first.
It's like playing Mario. You got to complete the first level.
Yeah.
You know? And then if you enjoy it, then why not do the next level? It's so interesting. I love what you said, where you just feel like you have this desire to prove yourself to yourself. There's this quote from Maslow. He's the guy that made the hierarchy of needs. And it goes something like, whatever you can be, you must be. God didn't give birds wings for them to walk along on the ground. And I think that there's something about knowing deep inside yourself that you're capable of more. That I think a lot of us want to try to unlock and want to express in the world.
It's like the happiest I think most people will ever be is like when they're in like the hunt, like when they're in the game. And I think I remember like telling somebody that like 6 months ago when I literally had nothing to show for it, no results, no business, no clients, nothing, not even an offer. And I was like, I just have a feeling like one day I'm going to look back at these times and those are going to be the times, like it still gives me chills. I'm like, those are going to be the times I look back on and like, those were the best of times. And like, you hear people say that a lot, like once they've achieved something. And so I think that's probably, it was just me like repeating that. But I genuinely recognized that like in that grind with no results, those were still the best of times. Like that was like the time I was going to look back and like miss.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at it like that and you look at like the work as like a privilege, it just completely flips the script in your mind. And then you can just go all in and be willing to make those sacrifices, which are going to look different for everyone.
Yeah. But it's like you literally described earlier. We look back on our early stages like a parent looks at their child, like with that element of pride and that element of joy and that element of, wow, like great job, kiddo.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting. There's a lot of talk about exponential growth and 10x. And one of my favorite entrepreneurs on the planet is a guy called Dan Sullivan. And he has this thing where, you know, we all have 10x'd in our life multiple times. And, you know, I've got 2 daughters, one's 4 and one's 1. If I look at my 1-year-old, it's like she can't talk yet.
Mm-hmm.
And in the span of 2 years, she's going to 10x her language capability. You know, just a few months ago, she couldn't walk. She's 10x'd her movement capability. She's 10x the speed she can get from here to that door. You know, or my oldest, it's like she just learned how to ride her bicycle. She's 10x'd her movement speed again. We do this constantly throughout our lives. And every single person who's listening to this, they can look back and say, oh yeah, I remember when my income was $5 an hour when I was doing chores for my granny.
Yeah.
And you can see how you've exponentially grown.
Yeah.
And you can do it again.
And even if your income, like let's say, like you're in my scenario where you just quit your job and your income is like less than what it was 2 months ago or something, you can look at your mindset and be like, what are the horizons and the standards that I measure myself on now? Because if you're growing and you're getting around successful people, which is number one key to like success is like get around successful people, which is why school is so awesome. But if you're doing that, like your standards are just going to increase. Like the numbers you measure success by are going to increase. And I think there's this time I was setting up a podcast with this guy who's he's like an info product businessman. I don't know exactly what his business was, but I remember I was compiling these courses for my original school community where I just wanted a bunch of entrepreneurs to teach how they'd made their first $1,000. And so we were communicating via email, and there was a little bit of a language barrier. He was based in China. And so I explained to him I wanted this to be like a course on how to teach kids or how kids could make their first $1,000 online. And we get on the call, and he had created this whole presentation, and it was how to make your first $100,000 online. Wow. And he just like misunderstood the number. And I was like, oh, I'm thinking too small. And it was geared towards total beginners. Yeah. It's like how to make your first $100,000 with an info product. And it was just like a reminder that like those things like change. Like that's such a good measurement of growth to like look at like what kind of numbers did you think in last year? What goals did you set? And now how are you thinking differently? And how are you thinking bigger? And that's like the best metric. Because if you're thinking bigger, you're setting bigger standards, you have, you know, a higher requirement for yourself of like what a good day looks like and what a good amount of output is. That's what's going to create the results. Yeah.
Because you think back to the first, you know, one of the first big ticket products you sold, $3,000 for 1 month. You now make $30,000 a month. And you thought that $3,000 was massive. And now you're like, oh, bro, that's like 10% of my like monthly recurring revenue. Mm-hmm. You're literally living it in real time.
Yeah, it doesn't feel real at all. Like meeting the other Skool Games winners and like as much as like the identity thing is so key, it's crazy because like so many people have asked me like, what's it like now to like make $30,000? And I'm like, I don't know. Like I really just still feel like so like inadequate sometimes when I'm like meeting these other people and I'm like getting to sit in this podcast with you. Like I was watching these podcasts religiously like just a few months ago. And it was like so intimidating to even think about meeting any of the guests on this podcast. Yeah. And so it's like, yeah, I think also that like comes back to this like concept of like, it will never be enough, and not in a bad way, but just that like, I will always be hard on myself because I know I could be doing more and I know I could be growing. And unless I am putting those like, I'm like juicing every bit of like energy I have out of a day and like putting as much work in as I can, like I won't be happy. But like, that's kind of a good, at least maybe it's psychopathic, but I think that's a good metric to base your happiness on, because like nobody else can determine that for you. You're in control of how much work you put in, where you put that, and that is what is going to directly correlate to the impact you make on the world. And so if that's how you measure like your like worth as a person, or your like just how proud you are of yourself, then you're always going to be pushing yourself to do better and do more and improve and learn and get around better people. And there's still days where like I'll put in 12 hours of work or something. I'm like, dang, that should have been a 16-hour day. Like I spent like 4 hours, not working. Like I got to sleep less tomorrow. And so, but yeah, I think that like I measure a good day based on like, how does that compare to the day before? And like, am I making progress forward? And it's not even necessarily about like the income. It's more like, it's like, am I innovating? Am I creating new solutions? Am I like working harder? Because like I could lose everything tomorrow, but if I'm connecting with successful people, I'm finding new solutions, finding new problems to solve, finding new clients. Like I'm more interested in that kind of progress than I am in like the actual number in my bank account.
Yeah, it's so crazy because now you have the identity of Skool Games Winner. To add that to like the little notch on the belt of your video game character. And as you say, the people that you've watched on this podcast, you're friends with them now.
Yeah. It's so weird.
That's crazy.
Like I remember watching like Daniel on the podcast and Kai, and I'm like looking at these people, I'm like, I just couldn't relate to them. I was like, they were heroes in my head. And like meeting them, I like every person that I've met through like the Skool Games, I've been so nervous to meet them. And it's like recently I just have to keep reminding myself, I'm like, I did that. Like
literally, like on the way into the podcast, it's like you're meeting Evelyn Weiss.
I know. I'm still nervous to meet Evelyn though. It doesn't feel real. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned at the start, February, you saw a post from Alex Hormozi, you saw Skool, you opened up a Skool account, and that's what's changed everything for you. Why? What is it about Skool that has given you the opportunity to experience what you've experienced now? And again, just to make explicitly clear, you're the person that grabbed that opportunity and went for it. And that's why you've been able to get the results, is because you took the crazy amounts of action. But what was it that drew you in, made you go all in?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was actually at the time, so right before I heard about Skool, I looked up this app. I heard of this app, Cameo, where like you could find successful people and pay them to like talk to you for 5 minutes. And I remember I was like looking up. I was like, oh, could I talk to like Graham Stephan, or could I talk? I was like looking up. I was like, Alex Hormozi is on there. Dang it! And like going through the list of all the people that I watched on YouTube.
Well, like a cameo charge would be.
I was gonna take it alone.
For 50 seconds.
I was gonna do whatever it took. I just like wanted to have that connection to successful people, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. I was like investing in events. I was like, okay, I can like go to enough events. I'll meet some cool people. I'll just like, continue to network. But it was just like, I wanted to get around people that had actually done what it was that I wanted to do, because I didn't grow up in that environment. I didn't have an example of entrepreneurship. I didn't like even the networking groups in my small town. Like it was like the, like power washing, the client I had. Like it was all these like small local businesses, which are amazing, but the mindset is very different. There's like a difference between owning your own job and owning a business. And so I just knew that I needed to get outside of like that circle. And when I heard about Skool, I had so much respect for Alex, and I knew he'd never promoted anything. So immediately I was like, okay, cool. Whatever this is, it's good. And then as soon as I got on Skool, it was the examples. Seeing like different stories, different ages, different niches, and like people that had no experience, like making crazy amounts of money, winning the Skool Games, making $50K, and like they had never made that kind of money before. And I'm like, oh, like this is real. Like there's so many different kinds of people here. And then obviously that proximity, that like you actually have access to them. You can actually have a conversation. Where else can you go and have a conversation with somebody that's like a network, like has over $100K or $100 million to their net worth, and like they're just on there in the DMs. Like, or you can go spend $1,000 and be on like 4 hours of calls a week with like someone like Ted. Like that was a no-brainer to me. And I'd never invested in a course, but I was just like immediately like, okay, this is like worth it. I'll either learn a ton from this on like what not to do, or it'll be everything I wanted it to be, and I'll network with all these people, and that's what it turned out to be. And so it was definitely just like the proximity and the ability to learn from someone that actually has the life you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because every level of success you experience, you have to let go of beliefs, patterns, and behaviors that got you to that point. You need to adopt new ones. That takes you to the next level, and you just do it again. Then you need to let go, new habits, new behaviors, da 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 da. What was it about the platform Skool that allowed you to experience that, and what beliefs and mindsets did you start to let go in the early stages?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I think it was the fact that everyone there was like there to learn. There was no like hate or like this pompous attitude that like, you know, I know everything or whatever. Like everyone was there to learn, which is kind of just like a characteristic of a learning platform probably. But I was just like, wow, this is such a cool community. And I think I was really just craving to be around people that were like that. And there weren't entrepreneurs in my hometown. So it was like, there is that component of just like wanting to be like these people. And yeah, like that just like accelerated the journey, because forming those relationships with people, like then they become your friends and they become the people that have the biggest influence on you. And so then you're comparing yourself, or you're using their standards to measure your own self. And so that was like really, really influential. And I think Skool as a platform is the only place that I've ever encountered that. And it's like a family of entrepreneurs. Like it's just, and it's like hundreds of thousands of people. And they all want to learn, and like they're all just like, there's just like humility about it. And I think that's kind of characteristic of like entrepreneurs that have actually put the work in to build what they have, is that they're pretty humble because they failed. And like you look at Alex Hormozi, like the difference between Alex Hormozi and like a lot of those like influencer kind of entrepreneurs is like Alex Hormozi is so humble. He's so honest because he's been net zero multiple times. And so I think that like that's the only conclusion I can come to, is like that must be why he's so humble, is because like he knows like where he started and like the work that went behind it. And I think that is just like, I don't know, it's just such like an electric kind of personality to be around. And like we were talking about at the very beginning of the podcast, everything can be learned and everything can be developed. So if you hang around people like that and you spend your time, instead of on Instagram or on Netflix or whatever, you're on Skool, you can still have fun. You can be going through GIF and just like looking at, you know, funny GIFs. You can just like be in the posts in the community, chatting with people on live calls. Like, you know, there's so many communities where it's just like people having fun, but like you're still around people that are building something. Mm-hmm. So even when you're having fun, it doesn't feel like unproductive.
Yeah, it's crazy, that humility piece. You know, I think like with Alex, he remembers what it's like to be a child. Mm. He remembers what it's like to be a baby entrepreneur. And again, I'm stuck on this metaphor today, but it's, you know, adults have such compassion and empathy for kids because they remember. It's like, I remember what it was like to not be able to do anything. Mm-hmm. It's like, of course I'll help. And I think like the best entrepreneurs, they view early stage entrepreneurs the same way that a grandparent would view a grandchild. It's like, there. It's okay. Mm-hmm. I know that you fell and you hurt your knee, and I know you think it's the worst thing in the world, but I have the perspective that actually this is not a big deal whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And the things that break early stage entrepreneurs are they make a mistake. They have to refund a $100 customer, and they think it's like the biggest, craziest problem in the world. And then later on in their entrepreneurial journey, it's like they lose $1 million on a deal. And they experience it with the same pain level.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so I think it's having that awareness and also that empathy for yourself as well, I think is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, because like you have to go through like, there's so much like pain and like responsibility and stress and things that like are really uncomfortable that you have to go through. And even when you're winning, like you're still like, you are responsible to make sure that continues in that trajectory. And so I think like being like real with yourself and knowing that like your decision-making ability, problem-solving ability is like what is going to determine whether you're successful or not. Yeah. It has to keep you humble. Yeah. Otherwise you're gonna trip.
It's interesting. Laura, who you also met out in the lobby there with Evelyn, we just did a podcast with her, and she said the interesting thing about Skool is you can transparently see everyone's success. Yeah. So you see the leaderboard, you see how much money everyone's making, you see how they're making it. And she says, you know, it just allows you to borrow hope. From
I
people.
love that. Yeah.
And I think that's what like you need in the beginning is you just need that belief.
Yeah.
And you can borrow that belief from stories like yours. You know? Mm-hmm. I love like, of course I do. I love like full circle moments. Mm-hmm. So it's like now you're on the podcast that you listen to give you that hope.
Yeah.
And now you're giving that hope to the Patrice of 6 months ago. You know what I mean? It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
is Elmer right? Are we living in a simulation?
I was telling you yesterday, like, I was watching Kai's podcast a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And I remember that just being like, it was such like an inspirational podcast, like hear what he had gone through to like win. And I think that was like something I realized. I was like, oh, like if you just put in a ton of work, even if you don't have an audience, even if you've never sold something, even if you don't have any network or any foundation, like you could just outwork everyone.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, okay, well, I don't have any advantage, a special skill. I'm not like, super confident. I'm not a public speaker or any of these things, but I can work really freaking hard. And that was just like what I held on to. I was like, I can work really hard to compensate for everything I don't have.
Right.
And so I think kind of like back to one of your original questions, that's where the work ethic came in, was just like, I always felt like I was compensating. Like first it was like compensating for confidence and compensating for the skill set. And like, so I was just like, I will work double whatever is like, the standard, because at least then I'll probably be a little bit ahead or at least on track.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Really, really, really good point. This is an inspiring conversation. I'm definitely feeling it.
We're going deep.
We are going deep. What I think is interesting about your next step is that hard work alone is not going to get you there. So now you've hit this 30K a month moment. You probably have realistically maxed out the amount of volume you personally can do. So you have a couple of interesting options. You can stay in this place. You can keep hustling. You can keep doing all the volume. Or it sounds like, I actually didn't know that you started working with somebody. So now you have Olga. But you're not going to get to 100K a month with this business model, with the way you're doing things, with just you. So how are you thinking about that next step? Do you want to keep growing? Do you want to stay where you are? Because everyone has a different threshold of where they want to grow to. And I think it's totally fine if we have that conversation. But
yeah,
what's next for you?
30K has never been the goal. I don't know that there is a monetary goal, but it's not 30K if there is. But what I did the other day was I drew out like an org chart of like, and I split up my business and I laid out every single role and basically wrote my name under every single role except for copywriter.
Bro, you're going to love this book we were talking about before.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you're going to love it. Yeah.
That's what I need. Yeah. But I heard somebody say there's like, draw out your org chart and look at it every single day. And it gave me so much clarity, like immediately gave me clarity. And I was like, okay, so I have one person here and then I need somebody here. And I was like, well, what if I just like find somebody to do the operations, like hire all those people? And I was talking to Benny with Ted, and that's exactly what he said. He was like, just hire somebody.
Benny's a beautiful man. I'm going on the record. He's a beautiful man.
He is so sharp, especially when it comes to building teams. Like every time I talk to Benny about building a team, I'm like coming away with gems. And so, so I think that's the game plan, is just continue to scale. And working one-on-one with like the people I'm bringing in as like actual copywriters, because like my brand is based around really good copy. And so that delivery has to stay top tier. But the beauty of it is that I have copywriting students and I have these incredible people that I've been coaching.
Right, in your Skool community.
So it's become a marketplace.
You've been growing your own team.
Pretty much.
Wow.
And some of them want to do their own thing and like run their own business, and I'm helping them do that. And others like really want to work with me. And so that's really exciting. And I think the best part about Skool, again, the people, is that like you can go and like I have a free community of like 330 people. Like those are all entrepreneurial people. Some of them are into copywriting, some of them are building their own communities, but they're all entrepreneurial. And so to source an operator, to source a community manager, it's easy.
Right.
Then it just becomes about like, okay, what is the actual onboarding process? Me, really delegating, like, because I know that's like one of the biggest things is like entrepreneurs think that they can do it better than everyone else, and so they don't delegate, they do it themselves.
Right.
And they definitely like, I'm like, yeah, I know I can write a banger email, and like I can write really good copy, and I do most of my copy right now. But that's one of the things I realized like last month at the end of the games was like, I don't want to fall trap to that, and I know that. Like at the end of the day, I'm not the best copywriter in the world. I know that I learned this in 6 months and that I can teach it to somebody else in 6 months. And so if that's the long game, like that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so that's the game plan, is just duplicating myself, that process that got me here. And then I'll essentially just do like the quality checks, make sure everything goes out is really good, and continue working with like the one-on-one clients and consulting and stuff.
We should do an interview again whenever you hit 100K. Let's just do this through your whole career.
Just every 2
It's like
months.
such an interesting case study. Genuinely, so interesting. So, wrapping up part 2. If you could go back in a time machine to Patrice in February, to little sweet Patrice, he didn't know anything. He was making $0, and you had a couple of minutes of her time. Like, what would you say to her?
First off, I would tell myself, you need to niche down. Stop trying to be an Alex Hormozi when you've done nothing with your business career. Because I was so scared to niche down into copywriting, which is why I had I made 2K, then I went back to 0. Because I was still trying to make this broad business offer work. So that's the first thing. I would tell myself, just niche down. Go all in with this. You're not married to a niche. Just go all in. And I think that would have just gotten me here even faster. Would have eliminated that month of April. So that would be the first thing. And then I think just encouraging myself, stay consistent. I think there was so much doubt and fear that every night I was going to sleep, I was like, I can't get a job. It wasn't crossed my mind oh, what if I have to get a job? It was I can't get a job, but I'm this many days away from being worth $0. And I was doing the math and I was just this is not good. This is I might have to ask my parents for money if I make this trip out to California and then it doesn't work out and I don't make 10K this month, this is going to be rough. But I think I would have just gone back and told myself you're doing the right things. You're taking these risks. They will pay off if you're just fully committed. So it would have been more just encouragement than anything else.
Yeah. For the beginner who is on the fence and has kind of been in that stage you were, they're watching all the content, they're listening to this podcast, they're, flying through books, and they just don't have that confidence to jump in. So what would you say to that person?
Find somebody that has that confidence for you. Get that confidence from somebody else. And if that means investing into a course so you can get around someone like Ted, or so you can get around someone that has that life you want. They have a business maybe that you're interested in, or maybe they don't. Maybe you don't know what business you want. Get around someone that has a business that is successful. And whether you have to pay them or you have to add some value, work hard, get in proximity, become very valuable to them, and just get someone to take you under their wing. There's so many entrepreneurs that want to help people, but you have to identify yourself as a hard worker in order for them to respect you and to know that that's not going to be a waste of their time. Because there's nothing worse when you give someone advice and they ignore it and don't take it. And so I think so many entrepreneurs are they want to see people win, but it's hard to invest your time if you don't know if someone's going to take it seriously. So if you're brand new, you've got to just take that either time where you're investing and putting some kind of value in front of them and solving a problem for an entrepreneur, or the faster way is just buy a program or invest in coaching or fly to an event or something. But get around someone who has that confidence in you and can show you how achievable it is. And using their story and kind of borrowing their confidence, you can get there a lot faster.
I'm even going to say encourage people to get around you. We'll link.
Yeah.
What do you want us to link? What's the best thing to link?
Yeah, you could link my Skool community. I'm pretty much doing everything through the one community right now. But yeah, no, I love connecting with people. My free community, there's so many fired up people, and it gets me excited when I meet someone like an Olga, who she shot me a message when I was winning the games, and she was like, "Hey, I know you're bringing on a bunch of clients right now. I'm looking to get better at copywriting. Can I write for free for you and work on some of your clients' work?" And I was like, let's get on a call. I texted her back. I was like, if you send this to people like me, multiple people, you are going to be making 10K a month so fast.
Oh, bro, you get 5 clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So easy.
Yeah.
And yeah, so she's officially coming on the team. I'm going to be paying her. And I want to make it good enough so that she doesn't actually go and work for 5 other people, because she is a killer. But that's if you do stuff like that and you're just adding value to people, you go through a month like you were talking about, you work for a lot less than your work is worth. But you're willing to put that in to prove yourself and to prove that you're hungry and to prove that you have that work ethic. That's just there's no better way to accelerate your process.
And my big takeaway from our conversation today is that you prove it to yourself. And when you prove it to yourself, you then get to collect that new identity. And that new identity will take you to a new place. And it's a place that you could never have dreamt of going before.
You should frame that. That was so good.
Bro, you crushed it.
Thank you.
So good.
So honored
Always
to be here.
Always a pleasure. Really, congratulations. Super excited. We love to see your success.
Thank you.
The whole community's rooting for you. Genuinely, it's been such an arc.
Thank you.
If you are not on Skool yet, There'll be a link to join that as well in the description. We'd love to have you there. You don't need experience. You don't need an idea. We will show you how to do everything. It's like Patrice is there. I'm there. Alex Hormozi is there.
Hormozi's there. If that's not
It's
enough.
like you can get on Zoom with all of us, all of these people.
Coaching from
Yeah,
Alex
and we'll literally
Sam.
show you exactly what to do step by step. And it's free to start, and we'd love to see you there. See you at 100K.
Let's go.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate you for producing.
So excited. Wow.